I mentioned before that the UN Climate Change Conference 2022 is coming back to the African continent. COP27 will be in Sharm el-Sheikh this November. And this gentleman, the next keynote speaker, has said there will be no room for useless promises, pledges, and buzzwords. So he means business. Please welcome the former Minister for Environment Investment for Egypt, a veteran economist, and now the UN Climate Change High-Level Champion for Egypt, Dr. Mahmoud Mohieldin. Thank you, sir. He is going to give a lecture, and then we have some questions and answer right after this. So please stay in the room. We'll hear from Dr. Mohieldin, and then I'll take your questions right after his lecture. Sir, please go ahead. Yes, straight to the lectern, sir. Okay.
Right. Thank you so much for this opportunity to address you all today. I've been listening carefully to this panel, and it gave me some additional points of emphasis on what we should be expecting at COP27 in Egypt. Speaking as well earlier to Ms. Eleni Giokos, the anchor from CNN, we met only a few weeks ago in the GCC countries, and it was like ages ago. It's a fast-changing world, so we really get all of these fast changing affecting the people, their lives and livelihoods, and we need to factor that in when we're discussing the climate agenda. So let me share with you the following based on the discussion that I have been part of and listening to during the last sessions of the day and yesterday as well. You can really see Africa as the most disciplined continent when it comes to climate and climate action. If the world is only one continent, if you have emissions of 3%, this could really be handled well and managed well at the same time, and that could be put under control. But we are not alone in this world. We know that Africa is 3%. You multiply that by 10, you have China. You multiply this by almost 5, you get US emissions, and then this is unfair world, because if you check the other Africa we're talking about, Africa not the discipline, but Africa the victim of the impact of climate change on all aspects of life. If you check the indices of climate risk, many African countries will be at the top. If we check the indices of hunger, malnutrition, vulnerability of coastal areas, again, African countries will be at the top. But there is a third aspect beyond being disciplined and victim. It's the opportunities that could really be provided by Africa and the solution that can and should come from Africa. The new technologies in a world that claims to be putting more investments and emphasis on sustainability and digitalization, most of the raw material are available in Africa. So the call for localization and being a substantive contributor to the supply chain with higher value added contribution, that will be making sense. And if we are concerned about the global carbon footprint, it's better to localize industries with value added where the raw material is as well. When you want to diversify more the sources of inputs to the supply chain, Africa is a good candidate between the East and the West. In addition to that, you check the opportunities when you see the continent is on top of the solar atlas and the wind atlas, and many of the biggest projects in the world now happens to be hosted in the African continent. With new initiatives and technology, you see the Green Hydrogen Alliance formed in Barcelona just a few weeks ago, with the leadership of 6 African countries, and coinciding with it at the same time, pushing for standardization of the industry, for the climate agenda to be clean, and for green hydrogen to be with 100% clean sources. So what that all means for the COP in Egypt, COP27, the first, it should be on the holistic approach. Africa cannot afford a reductionist approach to climate, so we need to deal with mitigation, adaptation, implications on loss and damage, issues related to finance. The second part is basically about the implementation and projectizing the great ideas as been introduced. I think we had enough of nice buzzwords, claims of love and affection of people and the planet, but with very limited impact on projects and changes in investment. The third, it's the advantage of Egypt being an active regional partner. It's part of Africa. Egypt is part of the Arab world. Egypt is part of the Mediterranean, with excellent political and economic relations around the world. So the regional dimension will be emphasized with an idea for matchmaking and creation of markets and investment opportunities. And then the fourth aspect that we're expecting is basically the full ownership of the climate agenda and the climate action, from the grassroots to the summits and its solutions. The very final point is basically how to finance all of that. Some of us, and for good reasons, are still chasing the $100 billion, the promise of Copenhagen, which, even if it is fulfilled fully, even if it is going to be multiplied by a factor of 2 or 5 or even 10, is not going to be sufficient to finance the climate action agenda. So the best thing then is basically to seek business partnership where the private sector can really provide a great deal of support and be part of the return, as it will be part, of course, of sharing the cost and the risks. So this will be a good call for the business sector to do more in the mitigation front, or the race to zero, and on the adaptation front, where the role of the business sector needs to be better and clearly defined. In addition to that, the new agenda would require more opportunities for the financial sector in the form of the institution responsible for risk management and insurance, not just insurance sector as provider of long-term finance, but in helping a risk management, risk mitigation, and pricing risk, and indeed providing opportunities for underwriting. It is also important that we need to give the opportunities when it comes to adaptation to more grants, more concessional finance for the multilateral development banks, and not to borrow more for fixing other people's and other countries' problem. My very final point is basically that there are many solutions, including debt reduction mechanism. We know that around the world there have been unprecedented increase of debts. We don't need to indebt Africa further. And actually, there are many good tools in finance and innovation in finance that could be used to reduce debt exposure and at the same time provide opportunities for the business sector to do a better job, and at the same time hit the objectives of the climate action when it comes to the different opportunities in the race to resilience and race to zero. Having said that, there will be many events and opportunities leading to the road in the COP in Africa, in Egypt, including 5 regional roundtables on business sector and private sector partnerships. There will be a meeting dedicated for finance and investments from the 7th to the 9th of September in Egypt. I'm happy as well that during this very important gathering here for the African CEOs, we managed to have some good alignment, understanding with the likes of IFC, AFC, Global Contact, and many partners, including BCG. I think we are up to a very good and practical solutions-based conference and summit, and focusing on projects with impact and with good adherence to the rules of engagement with high standards and avoiding, definitely, greenwashing. Thank you so much for listening, and looking forward to welcoming you all in Egypt, in Sharm el-Sheikh. Thank you.
Dr. Mohieldin, thanks a lot. Please come and join me over here and we'll take some questions. Appreciate that overview of how he's approaching COP27 in Sharm el-Sheikh. Beautiful Sharm el-Sheikh. I look forward to being there with you to talk about and to cover that for the world. And if you have a question in the audience, please stay with me for a second, because I just wanted to pick up on something, Dr. Mohieldin, you said, that there have been a lot of claims of love and affection for the people and for the planet, but there's been very little action. And that's been something that's been in every COP meeting, in every climate discussion. We go back to the same point, don't we?
Right. So let's be based on evidence. When I said this, I think I made some people unhappy. But let's start with the famous $100 billion, the old promise of Copenhagen. Until this moment, we didn't really fulfill this target. Last year in Glasgow, it was announced that the world had reached $79 billion. This was by a committee affiliated with the OECD. But this figure had been challenged by many think tanks, research centers, and Oxfam, because it may suffer really from some sort of double counting and even more than that. But the idea here is basically, even in that kind of a figure that may have sound nice and good and round figure to good as a good start back in 2009, but we are not in 2009 anymore.
Right.
We are now with better evidence to tell us that only in one area, which is energy, that you were just discussing a moment ago, based on the IEA, the International Energy Agency, we need more than $3.5 trillion a year just to do the just transition kind of investments. I'm not talking about adaptation. I'm not talking about impact on community. I'm not talking about compensation for those who could be affected by these kind of transitions. So I think here this is one part that we should be focusing on. When you claim, when you try to impress the audience and the sophisticated anchors and media and want to make some good news, please make sure that you mean what you are talking about, because you will be monitored, you will be accountable, your words will be haunting you forever.
Fantastic. If you have questions for Dr. Mohieldin in the audience, please raise your hand and we will take them now. We will get a mic into the crowd. If you have any questions about COP27, there's a mic going around the crowd. Okay, Eleni wants to ask a question.
Here we go.
Hello, sir. Really good to see you again.
Thank you.
You know, I've done so many of these panels. I'm Eleni Jokos from CNN. I've done so many of these panels, and I've spoken to so many island nation leaders. And when I ask the question about, you know, whether they're being heard, they laugh on stage in front of the audience. And they say that they just don't take seriously the commitments, firstly, by the developed world. Money has not been filtering through. Number two, and then also they feel that they are being held to a higher bar and standard when it comes to carbon emissions and green economy versus the biggest emitters. How do we get more African voices and also emerging market voices to ensure that they are heard at these conferences? Because it feels like, and they've said to me, that they're just talking to brick walls at this point in time.
Right. The old say in the corporate world is telling us that if you don't have a seat at the table, you'll be part of the menu. And the problem is here that we are talking in silos. The business, the growing and the more sophisticated business community that we see in Africa, emerging markets and developing economies are not necessarily taking part of the global discussion that basically shaping the priorities of policymakers and the investment banks and the asset managers. So I think it's an open call here in my capacity as the climate champion for COP27. There are alliances like the Race to Zero, the Race to Resilience, many coalitions in different sectors. I know how busy you are as business people. Through your aggregators, federations of industry, especially if you are a small and medium enterprise, through your investment community, try to make sure that you are part of this alliance. And it's an open invitation. You need to just to check the website of the UNFCCC. It's basically about how to be a member in any of these campaigns as relevant to your business. Then the other thing, that there are many sectoral and geographic-based coalitions that are focusing on policy, matters related to regulations, standard setting. I was just sharing earlier that they're a very important committee commissioned by the Secretary General of the UN, led by the former Minister of Climate and Environment, Ms. McKenna, and it's basically about putting the standards, codes, and procedures to avoid greenwashing. So if you are in the business here, financial or non-financial sector, if you are not aware of what's happening there, there's going to be regulations and supervisory issues affecting your business tomorrow. So, and this is an opportunity again to participate in this. What will shape the business are basically four things, and very quickly. The convictions of the CEOs of what's good and how to do well at the same time. The second is the non-price competition between different businesses, claiming that they are doing a better job when it comes to greening the business and making it more compatible with the Paris Agreement. The third is basically the compliance with the regulatory framework, which is going to be a very strong and influential one. Why? It's because of the fourth point, that the general public is growing with awareness of the importance of what they should really be doing better to protect their lives and their livelihoods. And that's why, even if you don't believe in any of the three above, not in your regulators, not in competition, not in your own conviction as a firm, but basically it's the voice of the general public that is impacting business and making it shifting in different ways. So it's better to be part of this movement rather than complaining that you were not part of setting the agenda.
All right, thank you, Dr. Mohieldin. I think we had a question in the audience there from the lady who... Okay, I think her question was probably answered, but this gentleman here has a question right in front.
Hello, I'm Dr. Alan Pamba from Roche. My question, you might have answered it, but probably follows up a little bit on Eleni's question. How does Africa chart its climate agenda free of external influence, recognizing the balance between climate agenda and the economic evolution that Africa needs? In a world where we contribute about 3% to global trade, we are highly in debt and highly vulnerable to be dictated to what the agenda shall be.
I think the starting point is basically what you just said now, that based on evidence, you need to say, well, it's basically the three areas that I said, emphasizing that you have been very disciplined as continent, as countries, and the contribution to the emissions have been highlighted several times. But what are the implications of that? Should I borrow in order to fix the problems that you caused to me?
Right.
And what kind of efficiency and what kind of fairness rules here that could govern that? The second thing is basically trying to get all of the evidence, as much as we can, of the vulnerability of cities and the requirements for adaptation in order to see if the loss and damage file can help us, or more important than money is the technology, which we started to get some benefits from in the mitigation front, but less so in the adaptation front. And Africa requires more in the adaptation than in the mitigation. It needs both, but now we know our way in the mitigation. We know how can we get good partnerships in the business and creating energy, solar plants, and all of that. The very final point, that you have great advantage, or we have, as I'm proud African, we have the great advantage, the vast land, the opportunities of the natural resources, that most of the components required for the two waves of change in our world, be them digital and sustainable, they are available in our land not far from where we are here. So we need to enhance the bargaining power and unleash the potential of competition with insistence of having contribution on the value-added side, not just to export raw material. And there is a hefty competition there that we can benefit from between China, US, between Europe and the rest of the world. So it's in our advantage. And just to give you one simple example, on the energy sector, now the leaders in the green hydrogen today are now from African countries. 6 countries formed this alliance that was launched in Barcelona. Those leaders, at the same time, insisted on standards for clean energy. Those leaders have been approached, and you'll be seeing many Europeans knocking in your doors, especially if you have the green hydrogen or natural gas that suddenly became a transitional clean energy. So here you need really to use this advantage of Europe and other advanced economies around the world trying to find better diversified and better access to energy with affordable prices. I think the bargaining position is shifting better now to Africa, and we need to maximize on it. Be fair. I mean, no, we are not going to exploit the needs, but basically we need to be fair in this game.
All right, and that is why you say Africa cannot afford a reductionist approach to climate.
Exactly, because the reductionist approach is very simple. People said sustainability means climate action. Climate action means mitigation. Mitigation means carbon and carbon pricing. Missing the rest of the story. Where is the rest of the SDGs? When I want to create job opportunities, when I want to have gender to be included in my agenda, where I should be dealing with poverty and how to finance the whole thing. A holistic approach will not just deal with mitigation and adaptation, loss and damage and finance, but will put that in a context of political economy to help our continent dealing with all of the challenges, including the one that you just mentioned, by just being holistic and practical in the approach and evidence-based.
I think we can all agree that Dr. Mahmoud Mohieldin is going to put the world on notice in Sharm el-Sheikh this November.
Thank you so much.
We're looking forward to it. A big round of applause to
with your help and support. Thank you so
Dr.
much.
Mahmoud Mohieldin, the UN climate high-level champion for Egypt. We look forward to being there this November.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.